So as I think you all know, we're living in the middle of a distribution revolution. Things are changing at an astonishing pace. Some days I think they're changing hourly in terms of what's going on with film distribution. So it's something where you need to just keep talking to people, keep looking around you, and see how this new world of distribution is unfolding. And so it's a lot of fun for me, I think, for people who like the old world of distribution where things never changed. Maybe it's too frenetic, but I think that we're living in a moment where, we're making this new world, and that's an opportunity for us that wasn't there for decades for filmmakers. And I think that's amazing. So for me, what's exciting about the new world and why it's relevant to all of you is it's created new opportunities for filmmakers and new opportunities for impact. So when I was thinking about what to talk about, it seemed to me that probably the one thing that most of you share is impact as maybe the primary goal for your filmmaking. And so I thought about all the filmmakers I've worked with. I've worked on over 1,300 movies over the last 14 years. And I've either been by the filmmakers' sides or they've reported back to me. So what I'm going to share with you is what I either witnessed or filmmakers reported back to me. So this is not a theory. This is actually what's worked and what hasn't worked in these recent years. And I've been fortunate to work on several films related to health. And when I talked to Christo, he was saying that he was seeing with The Divide, which if you haven't seen it, you should see it soon, and with the responsive health authorities, that there were new opportunities for films related to health. And that's also been my experience, and I'll talk about those films a little bit later. So what I'm going to talk about is trying to boil down the experience of all these filmmakers into 10 principles. 10 is a good number, so let's give it a try. The first one is to control your distribution. And in the old world of distribution, filmmakers did not control their distribution. Whatever distributor they found took all their rights, made all the key decisions about their distribution. So let me juxtapose these two worlds. They still exist, and they're side by side. So the old world of distribution, the distributor's in control. They make all the decisions. They work with a very fixed approach to distribution, which is basically they throw your movie against the wall and see if it sticks. And if it does, they support it. And if it doesn't, they move on to the next film. They don't design strategies for each film. They just have a formula that they follow pretty much blindly. In the new world, filmmakers can be in control of their distribution. And I think how important creative control is. And I would suggest that distribution control is as important as creative control. You worked for, maybe years making your film. And in the old model, you turn it over, and then somebody with different goals, is making all the choices. And a couple of years ago, I was in London, and I was speaking, and I asked the filmmakers in the audience what percentage of them were happy with the distribution that they'd had. And I'd say there were, over 200 people in the theater, and I think 2 hands went up. And the other 198 were somewhere between apoplectic and mildly dissatisfied with the distribution that they'd had. So that's the situation that I've experienced, when I've worked with filmmakers. And the way you can retain control is to split your rights. That doesn't mean you're not working with distributors. You're just giving certain rights to certain distributors, and you're retaining some rights yourselves. And the rights that you need to retain yourselves are the right to sell the film directly from your website, both digitally and on DVD, and the right to do screenings. I'm not talking about the theatrical run, but special event screenings. And if you have those two things, then the chances that you're going to be able to make key choices as you go are much greater. And if you're nimble, you have a distribution team, then as you learn in each stage what's working, that can inform what you do in the next stage. So the strategy evolves over time. You refine it based on your experience in each stage. So this next image, it's filmmakers who have gotten on ships and left the old world, headed to the new world. And the sea monsters can represent whatever you think they should represent. So the second principle for me is you need to design a customized strategy for your film. Every film, in my opinion, needs its own strategy based on what your goals are, who your core audiences are, what versions of the film they're going to be. So often with documentaries, there's a feature version, there's an hour version, maybe there's a shorter version too. And then the windows of distribution, which I'll talk about in a minute. So if you're able to customize the strategy, particularly around your core audiences, your chances of succeeding are much better. So the first thing you need to do in making a strategy is to prioritize your goals. And although this might seem like a simple step, most of the filmmakers I work with, when I ask them to prioritize their goals, they aren't capable of doing that. All goals are equal: maximizing career, maximizing revenue, maximizing impact. And I always say to people, I think it's really crucial to know what your most important goal is. You can have other goals as well, because if you do have clarity about your goals, it's going to allow you to make choices as you move through your distribution. And if all your goals are equal, you're going to just, be perpetually confused. The issue of audiences is really crucial. In Hollywood, the definition is still quadrants: older males, younger males, older females, younger females, which is such a pathetic definition of audience, but studios, seem to keep thinking that way. What I would suggest to you is to think about how people are organized online, because almost every audience that you can think of is online in some way or other. And then if you figure that out and think in micro audiences, not just people in their 20s, there's ways to reach people directly and have word of mouth spread from those people if they respond to your film positively. Identifying potential partners. This is NGOs, could be educational institutions, could be government bodies. Try to figure out who those potential partners are early. Reach out to them while you're making the film. Don't wait until it's done. Think about what organizations could use your film as a tool to help accomplish their goals. And if you're able to identify those organizations and explain it to them, then you're not asking them to do you a favor, you're giving them an opportunity to use your film to further what they do. And then I'm going to talk about windows in a minute, but this is a key part of any strategy: where you start and what you're going to do next. And while in Hollywood the windows are collapsing, we used to ridicule studios for being so anal about their windows, and now they're kind of giving up on their windows. But for independents, windows are more important than they've ever been. So when you look at your strategy and you think of where you are on the spectrum, from formulaic, as in every film's distributed the same way, to customized, where each film has its own strategy. So here's formulaic, the Twinkie factory, and here's customized. So the third principle is to raise funds to finance your distribution strategy. A lot of the filmmakers I work with have spent every penny they have finishing their movie, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to make a distribution deal and all my problems will be solved. Well, what I would say to them is that most films need some money to cash flow distribution, even if they're going to eventually have distribution partners. And if you start out with zero resources, your possibilities are going to definitely be limited. So you need to be thinking about where that money is going to come from. It could come from crowdfunding. It could come from foundations. It could come from wealthy donors. There's a variety of possibilities, but it's essential to figure that out. Now, when you're making a film, you have a production team and a post-production team. When you're distributing a movie, you need a distribution team. Some filmmakers suffer from the "I have to do it all myself" disease. That's a bad disease, sometimes fatal. So I really encourage you to think about who is going to be on that team. There are a lot of people out there that have experience that could help you in a part-time way. But you need a core group of people who have expertise in different areas to work with. And some of those people will work for a percentage. Some of them you'll pay by the hour. There's different possibilities, but that's a crucial part of a successful strategy. So this is about core audiences. And from the time you dream up your film in the shower one morning, you need to be thinking about who the core audiences for your film are. And then you need to start to identify them. You need to figure out how to reach them. And then when you do reach them, you need to kind of test how interested they are in your film and your subject. And then ultimately you want to connect with them, which would be getting them hopefully to join your mailing list or kind of be involved with the film in some way. And then finally, you want to activate that core audience. And if you're able to do that successfully, then your chances of ultimately succeeding are much greater. So here's a kind of juxtaposition of the old world of audience and the new world. In the old world, audience came last. People made a film, studios made films, and they thought about audience maybe a month or two before the movie was released. And even if they had a kind of little bit of a specific idea, they generally didn't do anything differently. There are some exceptions to that, but what I recommend to you is to be thinking about audience from the beginning. I'm not saying make a different movie. I'm just saying figure out ways to connect with that audience while you're making the film. In the old world, filmmakers didn't have direct access to audience. There were always people in between them, whether their movie was in a theater, on television, on DVD. In the new world, you can have direct access to audiences online. And that's maybe the biggest difference, because if you have direct access to audience, then you have ways to share your goals with them, get their support, get feedback on what you're doing. And they can be a tremendously powerful ally in what you're trying to do. And the way I think studios think of audience mostly is they think of them as sort of couch potatoes that they just want to lure off the couch for the opening weekend. And I think the way you should think about audiences is them as active supporters and even kind of patrons of what you're doing. And that, I think, is what crowdfunding can represent. So the next idea is to build partnerships with a variety of people. And what I mean by win-win is it's a situation where it's going to benefit you, but you really want that partnership to benefit your partner. And to think about, as I said before, who can use your film as a tool to accomplish their goals, and then explain that to them in a clear way. Those can be tremendously valuable partnerships. And if somebody's a partner with you on one film and it really benefits them, then their chances of being a partner with you on the next film are much greater. Building an audience around your film is what you want to do, and there's a variety of ways to do it. So crowdfunding, some people think about crowdfunding is to raise money. I would say that's the third most important goal. The most important goal is to build early awareness of your film and to build a network of support for your film. So if you're able to do that, you're also testing, audience response. And if you're making a film and you get, you raise, 1% of your goal, the chances that when the movie's done, there's going to be a lot of interest in your film are probably much lower. than if you do a crowdfunding campaign and you get a lot of response, and you'll figure out who is in that audience, what the mix is, and that's going to be really helpful to you. I can't overstate the importance of building a mailing list. A lot of people think having likes on Facebook is enough. Having names and email addresses of people is about 10 times more valuable, if not 100 times more valuable than having likes on Facebook. One of my clients opened a movie across the US in 20 cities. She had 86,000 likes on Facebook, and I don't think a single person went to see the movie, although they would have really liked the movie if they'd gotten there. Whereas with a mailing list, and you can stay in touch with people, once a month, do not send them boring updates on your film or relentless self-promotion. Think about what you can send them that they want to receive. And there's a lot of different examples of that. Say you have a film with, great cinematography. Well, maybe you send them an image a month. Maybe the film has amazing music. You send them some music once a month. Maybe it's a food film. You send them a recipe once a month. But figure out what they actually want to open, not just ignore. The importance of having a website that is substantive and dynamic is great. And then obviously, as you all know, social media, is a crucial part of building an audience. Now, here's two examples. There's a film called Note by Note, which is about the making of a Steinway piano. And I worked with a filmmaker on the distribution. It was very successful. And I asked him if he could give me a chart of his audiences. So I want to show you this chart. The first few categories are obvious: Steinway dealers, Steinway owners, piano students, and their parents. My favorite, though, is piano technicians. Piano technicians are piano tuners. So the filmmaker learned that there was a National Association of Piano Tuners. He went to the convention in Anaheim. There were 750 piano tuners in the room. He showed them the movie. They loved the movie, and they've been telling people whose pianos they tune about the movie ever since. And that's a situation where you reach a group of people in a core audience. They really respond to your movie. They're going to spread the word within that core audience. It's not paid advertising. It's really your word of mouth. Another example is a film called American Meat, which is about organic meat raising. And I asked the filmmaker to make a chart, and this is what he came up with. I thought it was pretty creative with the colors and the shapes and the sizes. And then as he was doing his distribution, he would change the chart as one audience that he thought wouldn't be that significant became more important, and other audiences kind of diminished that he expected to be there. Okay, so this is about implementing your strategy step by step. So you start out with a strategy, and then in the first stage you learn some things, and then what you do in the next stage is going to be influenced by what you've learned. And as you go, you're going to keep refining it. So let's talk about the stages. For a lot of filmmakers, the first stage is festivals. And I would say that I think festivals are overrated as a means to maximize your distribution. There are some festivals that are quite important, but most festivals are local, and it's just a kind of odd mix of films seen by a bunch of local people. For you, I think conferences are going to be far more important than festivals. And conferences are more complicated than festivals. They don't have a simple application process. But an example, there's a film called Lioness, which is a documentary about women coming back from war in the United States. And the first screening of that film was to the 500 people in the United States who were meeting and who were the most important people in that issue across the country. They saw the movie that night, and the future of that film was assured, because those people all went back to their organizations and spread the word about the film. And for years, that film has been used very effectively. If it's in red, it means that you don't have total control of whether or not you're going to be in that situation. So festivals, there's an application process. Conferences, you have to convince. Limited theatrical release is something that you can be assured of because there's a way you can rent a theater. The problem, I don't know if it's true, Christo knows better than I do, in the UK, but in the US, theatrical release for documentaries is almost over. A film can be in a theater, there just won't be any audiences there because people have stopped going to documentaries in theaters. But what's grown alongside it are special event screenings. This could be on a campus, it could be in a museum, could be an art center or a library. It's a single event, there's a screening of the film, and there's usually a discussion, maybe the filmmaker's there, maybe there's a panel afterwards. And so it's a unique way for people to experience the film. I think, Krista, with the divide, you said in most cases there was the discussion after the film. And that's a reason for people to get there and not just wait till it appears, on Netflix or wherever. This is not so important, I understand, in the UK, but it's very, very important in the United States, educational sales. And so what's happening now is people are having a window for special event screenings that may be at the same time as they're doing limited theatrical. And then after that, those are rental screenings, so somebody's renting the movie from you to do the screening. After that, there's a period of time for educational sales before movies become available to consumers. Then there's TV, which is your basic nightmare. There are some possibilities, and those are important, but it's really tough. There's subscription VOD, which is Netflix and Amazon Prime. Hulu is another example. And because those are both in red, it means that you can apply, but you don't necessarily get accepted. But the next one, you can definitely be assured. If you want to be on iTunes, you want to be on Amazon, there's some organizations that you pay and they put you on those places. There's no question that you can be there if you want to be there. Retail DVD, it's tougher and tougher to get a distribution deal because DVD sales have fallen. And usually you can't get a DVD deal unless you're giving that company your digital rights as well. And then this is selling directly from your website. And I think that whatever combination of distribution deals you make, whatever distribution partners you have, you should always retain the right to sell directly from your website, not just in the UK, but worldwide. And maybe there's some situations where you make a deal, somebody makes a deal for you in Germany or France, and those are exclusive deals, and you can't sell into Germany or France. That's okay. But I want the film to be available to anybody in the world, and if they're living in territories where no deals have been made, you can sell to them directly. Okay, so this is just kind of conceptual. Being proactive is what you need to be. There's very, very many filmmakers who approach distribution in a very reactive way. They hope to get a distribution deal. They sign horrible deals. They don't do due diligence, on the distributor and find that they've, done a horrible job with the last 15 filmmakers they worked with. You have to be proactive and creative with your distribution strategy, nimble. You're a small team, a distribution team. You can make decisions, turn on a dime. When there's opportunities, you can seize them. When there's obstacles, you can go around them. And of course, you need to be tenacious. So the last principle to me is you build an audience around this film, and then you take your team and that audience with you to the next film. And some people say to me, well, if I made a film on global warming and the next film is on AIDS, I'm not going to take that audience with me. And I can tell you there's many filmmakers who have been able to take audiences to films on different subjects because they've built a connection with that audience. And those people in the audience want to support that filmmaker in what she or he, does. So here's a couple quick slides. People come to your website the first time they're a visitor. Ultimately, you'd like to get them to subscribe. Hopefully at some point they'll turn into a customer, but really what you want them to be is a patron. And here's 3 kinds of audience I think it's useful to understand. So there's core audiences that exist out there, independent of you. They're in the world. Then there's the audience you build around a film. And then there's the audience that you build around you as a filmmaker. And that personal audience is going to determine how independent you are, and how likely you'll be able to have a sustainable career. So I'm just going to give you an example of a couple films that have followed in these footsteps that are health films. The first is a film called The Big Picture. It's about dyslexia, and Christo helped us with it in the UK. It premiered at Sundance. It started out to be a 10-minute movie for families with dyslexia in them. It grew to a 52-minute movie. And, it turned into a really terrific film. So it got into Sundance, and then it got onto HBO. Then it came time to do educational distribution. And I learned that most campuses in the US have what are called learning centers. And learning centers are for students that have different learning issues. So I thought, well, if most campuses have learning centers, our educational distribution is assured because most of those learning centers are going to want to have a copy of this film that they can show to or lend to their dyslexic students. That turned out to be true. So it had very successful educational distribution, a great social media campaign. Our target audience was dyslexics and their families. The next audience out was the people that work with them in terms of educators and social workers and the other support that they get. 1 out of 5 people in the world has some degree of dyslexia, but I think it's very little understood. And this film is really well received by the dyslexic community. And so, again, for years to come, it'll be being used, and it'll be educating people who don't have any idea what dyslexia is as well. So the team then went on to make a second film called Paper Tigers, which is about the early traumatic experiences that kids have and how it affects their health possibilities throughout their lives, not just their psychological health, but their physical health. And It started out at festivals. We didn't do a major TV thing early. We started doing screenings around the country. We did a screening in Tulsa for all the educators in town. It was over 2,000 people. And the response was so terrific that one screening led to another screening that led to another screening. And eventually there were over 500 screenings of the film. We started out by targeting educators, particularly K through 12. But then other audiences showed up, social workers, Native American communities, people involved with juvenile justice, and then ultimately judges. So that's an example of having a team where you can keep doing outreach, keep testing audiences, and audiences where you think there's a possibility, you can put the resources into connecting with that audience. And when it came to educational distribution of the film, which we just started a few months ago, we've now made licenses with over 4,500 locations around the United States. And the idea of trauma-informed education, which is not strict discipline, but where you're thinking about the kids as individuals and figuring out ways to mentor kids that have never had a mentor or, a solid parent. The timing of the movie has been incredible. It's been a catalyst for this change, and it's gone really well. There was a thing called American Education Week that happens every year. So we organized 70 screenings that happened within that week around the country. Then eventually it was on television on Pivot. And now it's going to be in England in the next week in different places. There's one screening in London. So then the third film this team made is called Resilience. And Resilience is about the programs that have been developed to help kids, with the aftermath of these traumatic experiences. The distribution of Resilience has just started, but we're going to all the audiences that we connected to with Paper Tigers. And then we just recently started something called Resilience Reset. Now, as you might have noticed, Reset doesn't normally have a hyphen, but the team thought having a hyphen would make it stand out more. So they created this concept that all these screenings could happen around the country, and somehow between the art and the idea and the hyphen, there's people all over wanting to be part of this and do their own screenings locally. So it's gone great. So I'm going to show you two last things. These are the reasons as documentary filmmakers you should be happy that you're not making fiction features. You have grants and donors available to you that very few fiction filmmakers do. We've talked about partnerships with nonprofits. The idea that the film can have utility for viewers, not just be an experience that they, watch once, but something that can be useful to them, for a long time. The possibility of reaching people this way, the semi-theatrical screenings that are becoming more and more important in distribution. We talked about multiple versions and core audiences. Sorry about the word Trump in there. The sense that these films really have urgency, and finally, the most important reason. So I think this festival is a really unique opportunity for the health professionals and the filmmakers to meet. Can I just have a show of hands for the health professionals in the audience? And how about filmmakers? And how about people who are both? Okay, well, there'll be more of those soon. I think it's great that you'll have these 2 days to meet and share each other's experience and see if you can figure out some kind of collaboration. This is one image of people collaborating, and this is another one that I liked. So I wish you well. I think it's a great moment, and thank you for listening. And I'll be around if you're interested at lunchtime, and then I'm going to try to come to the 2 receptions later. So thanks very much, and good luck with changing the world.